Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and get started because I want to be respectful of your time. What we will be sharing here today comes out a lot from the listening sessions and conversations with various ADI groups around campus and employees, faculty, and staff here on our campus. And so we're taking that information and we're synthesizing it, we've analyzed it, we're synthesizing it, and then we're actually saying, this is what we've learned, this is what we've gleaned, and this is what we are going to now, this is the action that we're going to take with that information. What you're seeing here is the beginning of that particular process. And that's why we want to make sure that we are sharing with you, we're being as transparent as we possibly can with what we are doing, as we are doing it, so that you are aware and that we can get some feedback and input from you in terms of how is it impacting you and what we need to be mindful of as we continue to shape this agenda for us going forward here at Western. The Office of Equity, as you all know, is a new office or division within the university. And it has two functions, the compliance piece, which is really a Title IX and CRTC. And some of you may be familiar with that. It's on the ground floor of the old main building. And then we have the education and professional development piece. We've been doing our ADI work across, again, in a very decentralized way. We've done some important work, we've had great impact, but the Office of Equity now wants to sort of bring a greater level of focus and coordination around that work so we can have greater impact across our campus community. And so the piece that you see there, the second piece that you see there with the education and professional development is what I really want to focus on today, because that's the piece we need to flesh out and begin to develop as we move through defining what our ADI work would look like. Just as a reminder, listening sessions occurred throughout last year. We did them with faculty, staff, and students in those particular groups. We met with, and I talked with deans, division heads, ADI committee groups, and so forth. Not all of them, because we do have a lot of ADI groups here on campus. And that's not a criticism, that's just a reality, because we recognize how important this work is, and many of us have taken our time and energy and interest to really begin to carve out a space and do that work because it's important to us. And so these themes, again, we're narrowing down on the themes that we gleaned that cut across all those groups that I've just mentioned. And one of the first themes that I can say has stood out for me and my team who have looked at this is the desire for community and belonging here at Western. And we know that community and belonging exists. They exist in some very smaller areas within our department, maybe in our units, the group of people who we work with, affinity groups, and so forth. It exists there in that small scale. But what I'm hearing as I meet with you and talk with you is that when you leave those spaces, when you leave that small nuclear community, you're not having that sense of community and belonging out there. One of the other themes that also came up too is accountability. We're here and we need to uphold our values. And you know what our values are. We have a strategic plan, and I can only list a few of them for you. It's about student success. We can all agree on that. That's one of the major values and priorities that we have here. Critical thought is what we say we value, and we want to nurture that particular thing. And then equity and justice. And we're doing that work in various ways across campus community. How broadly are we upholding those values across all of the spaces in which we navigate on this campus? We got to take a look at that. Timely and relevant communication. I've been hearing about that. We've had a problem with that. It's not something my office is going to fix, but I wanted to make it aware that this is some of the things that we are learning about how we communicate and so forth. And kind of one of the reasons why I want to keep having these kinds of conversations with you and hear from you about what we are doing, how it impacts you, and what you would like to see us do within the confines of our resources and our capacity. We need to comply with our disability accommodations. That has been a criticism and an observation and experience that I hear situated largely within our student groups on campus. And so we definitely need to, as a community, not just the folks who are in charge of writing those accommodations and sending them off to the appropriate entities, but we as a community need to figure out how are we engaging in that particular space. Walking the talk. We make promises, we say we're going to do things, and sometimes there's no follow through. For whatever reason, I don't know. I'm not judging or blaming anyone. We want to increase our efforts around ADI. What are we doing to actually do that? Are we walking that? If we want more diversity on campus, are we actually going about doing that in a very meaningful, observable way? And that goes to the next point. taken and identifiable and measurable actions? Can we see what it is that we're trying to do, and can we measure it to see if we actually have any impact on it? As opposed to just saying, yeah, we're doing it, but it's over here in this corner, and we can showcase that work, but it's not infused or integrated around our community. And then transparency in decision making. I can't tell you how many times I've actually heard that. We don't know how they make decisions around here. So one of the things that I also heard too is a need to remove the silos. I can't tell you, that was one of my first introduction to Western. We have silos here, Jacqueline, and you're going to encounter them and you're going to learn them and they're going to impact how you do your work, so be ready. And silos exist and there's some benefits for them. We want to make sure we cover the space for how we can actually do and control and engage in our work. I'm thinking about silos very broadly, but we know it can also appear within our own immediate unit departments and our spaces too, in terms of how we engage each other, how we communicate, how we build curriculum, how we solve our problems. And when these come up, it's not because they're good and they're advantageous, it's because there are problems that these silos create in how we actually do our work. Siloing goes back to one of the things that I just mentioned about accountability, how we make decisions. Folks don't know because decisions are made within a vacuum in some individuals' minds, and they figure we need to know more about how decisions are being made. And then having access to information. We all know we need that information to make things happen, and this is one of the things that we're doing today. This particular theme undergird almost everything that we heard in a listening session last year. It was really about psychological and physical safety. And we need to drill down to figure out what that means, because psychological safety doesn't mean the same thing for each one of us. And not to say that when we drill down, we identify that we're going to solve it for everyone, okay? But we at least need to be mindful of what the challenges are and what the experiences are of individuals in our community about psychological and physical safety. We also have folks who are among us. They're our employees, they're our colleagues, we see them every day, who come to work at very different times when they don't have the normal 8 to 5 hours. And some of them have to walk great distances in the dark to get from where they park to the building. And some of them are actually working in some of those buildings by themselves and feel a sense of, I'm unsafe here doing that, okay? And so we have to be mindful of when that need has been identified, how are we going to address that need so members of our community don't feel like, yes, we're talking about physical and psychological safety, but this particular matter that affects me and my community isn't being addressed. And so I come here and I still don't feel a sense of belonging because I feel unsafe because of the things that I have to encounter just to get here and be in this particular environment and so forth. So those are the 4 themes that I thought I wanted to share with you just to frame where we're going to go right now. We're trying to understand the role of how ADI plays out within those 4 themes and how we situate ADI within the framework of creating a community of people who are diverse, okay, who feel included, who feel there's a sense of equity, and who have access and accessibility within that particular environment. That's a community that you're saying, when you say ADI and we're moving towards ADI, you're saying that you want a community that has those things in there. And we have to figure out what it is that we need to do to create that community for ourselves in this space, okay? And how we're going to go about doing that. So there are 3 things that I think that I really like to focus on today. Our compliance piece, I mentioned, our communication and capacity building piece. So I want to look at those 3 gears very quickly here. The compliance piece, as I mentioned, already exists within the Office of Equity. CRTC and Title IX is that. Compliance training, you've seen it, they get inclusive models, you get those emails that you also love. When complaints come in, when people file bias response, and things come into the CRT Title IX office, we are looking for patterns and trends. And one of the things that we want to do with that pattern and trends is to really use it to inform the kind of programming and the things that we want to do proactively within our community to make sure that those particular issues, those biases and microaggressions and racisms, and all of the antis that you can find, you can anti and you can fill in the blank, or isms, and you can put the words in before that exist, that we're not going to get rid of them, but at least we want to minimize them. We want to know what trends are happening. We want to dig into why they are happening, and we want to find out and begin to figure out how we can lessen those particular things so they do not become a daily part of your experiences here on this campus, because that will definitely erode any feeling of belonging and inclusion and equity that you're going to have here. Communication. is another gear in that particular piece. Communication is an issue for this institution. We know that. Let's just not even pretend that it's not. It's a work in progress. We definitely have to work on that. But when I talk about communication here, it's just not only about what we do institutional-wide. One of the things I also heard too is that the flow of information about what is happening and how it all fits together is just also lacking at this institution as well. And don't get me wrong, this is not a criticism of the place I work, or Jacqueline, how can you stand in front of everybody and talk about Western the way you do? It's a reality, and it's just not only our reality. It's the reality of other places that we exist as well, too. And so let's name the problem and figure out how we can address it, okay? So folks want a flow of communication, and so they can know what's going on across campus and how it all comes together. They want to have a more streamlined process about and access to general information. I want to do this job for you all as well as I possibly can. One of the ways that I can do that is by having you inform that work. And so one of the things I would like to do is put together an advisory group. All of you won't be able to inform that work. That would be just way too chaotic. But I think putting together an advisory group made up of representatives across this campus community to help bring information from your area to my office and my office back to your area is a good way to deal with the flow of information, knowing what's going on and how things fit together, and for me to understand what are those critical needs out there that are unmet, or maybe we're trying to meet them in a small scale, but we are not necessarily getting to them broadly, and we need to get to them broadly, and how can we actually do that? Website overhaul. I want to be able to create a website where you can go find the information that you're looking for. If you want to know how to have difficult conversations with your colleagues, I want you to see that website as a place where you can get the things that you need when you need them, and as often as you need them. And that's a work in progress. And so we have information, tips, and resources there, again, to help you figure out how we're going to practice this stuff. And then one of the things that I think we need to be doing, which I think is fundamental to where we want to go, is around our definitions. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard diversity, equity, inclusion defined in more than a dozen ways. And yet we all say we're going to go forward and create diversity, equity, inclusion, but we don't have that shared understanding. It's not an agreement I'm looking for. It's an understanding of what we mean by those terms. And in that understanding, I want to establish what it is that we are trying to achieve within diversity, equity, and inclusion. The question is, what aspect of it do we feel is a need and a priority for us here? So our community building piece is going to be our capacity building our capacity to share our spaces more intentionally, more meaningfully, and more skillfully and productively. And so we're going to look at our knowledge. Do we have an understanding? What is important for us, and how are we going to go about intentionally doing that particular thing? But we do have to have a definition, operational definition, not a conceptual definition of that. We need to have that shared understanding and awareness, and we need to begin to figure out what skills that we need to build. So the community building work that we're going to be doing is going to be situated in skill building, education, and deeper dive. And I know many of us do deep dive things. We talk about those hotbed issues, those issues that rip communities apart. And you can talk about them, racism, you can talk about them, anti-Semitism, you can talk about them, anti-trans, you can talk about whatever the isms and the antis are. Do we have the capacity, do we have the skill sets to enter into that space meaningfully and intentionally, so when we leave that space, we're not more harmed than when we entered? When we're talking about inclusion, when we're talking about belonging, when we're talking about community, this is the things that we need to be figuring out in terms of our skill building. In our education, we want to have the foundational knowledge, operational, not just a conceptual definition of ADEI, because you can find it anywhere on the internet. We have to get into a conversation where we're defining it operationally for us here at Western. Even more so, drilling down what it means for us within our particular unit. We have to be true and honest with ourselves. Can we, in our unit, our division, deal with all of those, the spectrum of ADI? And if the answer is no, but what is a need and priority for us is the D, is the E, or it's the I, then you highlight that and you start there. You define that and you begin there. And you work to your bones in creating that particular environment of equity or inclusion. One of the things that I realized that really creates a lack of, threaten our environment of belonging is not having a good sense of ourselves and others. We tend to other when we disagree. Do you notice that? You are fill in the blank because we don't see things the same way. We like to other a lot around here. That is not good, folks. You can't have a community of equity, diversity, and inclusion if you're othering people every time there's a disagreement on something. you're actually doing the opposite of what you are intended to do and the goal you intended to meet. Skill building, practicing cultural humanity, that is something that we're going to have to work on, especially when we hold true to the things that we believe in. My gosh, I believe that cake is the best dessert that anybody can have. And anybody who disagrees with me, I'm going to have a problem with them. I'm going to tell them that they're anti-cake lovers, you know. And so I make light of it, and just because, not because I'm saying that the issue is not serious. You have to maintain a sense of humanity and humility in the things that we hold dear to, because we exist within a larger community of people who that belief and those actions impact. And how we impacting them is our responsibility, very much our responsibility. So the skill building, getting to a place where we can actually share space and mitigate some of our conflicts and our challenges. And then, folks, and we'll be moving in and through these spaces, then, folks, we can say, let's go talk about that hotbed issue, because you know what? I think I may be ready for that, because I'm coming in here not only to have my positions be known, but also to understand other people's position. And I want to walk away out of here knowing that I can still see you, sit next to you, have lunch with you, and not feel like if you are somebody else other than who you are, because I cannot accept the fact that you disagree with me or accept your opinion on something. Those are some of the gives that we're going to have to make consciously here in our community. Community building actions. These are some of the things that we're going to do. Operational definition of ADI. And we're going to talk about creating opportunities for dialogue across spaces. And I want to have dialogue today, too. We're going to have less talk circles. We have to create those opportunities, again, communication, for us to talk about the things that are important to us. And I really want to have a day of learning where we actually get together to educate each other about our communities and to listen and to learn. So in sum, when you look at all the things that we want to do this year going forward, our community building, capacity building, skill building, education, next steps will look something like this. We want to have a shared set of ADI operational definitions. So we know what it is we're talking about, we know what it is we're trying to achieve, and we're not making it so broad that we are doing everything and anything within there. Doesn't mean that we all have to do the same thing. Absolutely not. There is several different ways to slice a cake. The isms, we tend to use those words, we tend to weaponize those words sometimes when we are angry with each other. And we make everything become an ism in a way that it's not. And so we cloud it, and then that's threatening, and that's isolating, and that is not inclusive at all. Professional development opportunities, when you see those things, jump right on them like you did today. Come on and visit and do those particular things. Dialogue. I think one of the missed opportunities when we do ADI work is talking to each other in broad spaces, honestly and with integrity, but also with respect. So we want you to come talk to us about your experience. We want you to participate in the training. And I say participate, don't say this is not for me because I'm not that person. Just go because you're curious. And then become an ADI champion. It doesn't have to be that you have to be out there doing all of this champion work and stuff like that and walking around with an ADI champion t-shirt or flag that you wear. It means that I'm committed to making sure that I do not unintentionally create an environment that I don't want to exist, I don't want for other individuals. And just know that I'm here to listen, and we will continue to do our best to serve you in every which way we can. It's good to see all of you here today. Thanks again. Thanks.